It is time for Lying Wonders, Strangest Things with Michael H. Brown. I'm Zach Martin on the Big Fat American Radio Network, and we can finally get you on iHeart.com, which is a huge, bigly deal for you, Michael, because, well, the audience is worldwide and hundreds of millions of people check out iHeart.com. So that's a good thing.
That's great. Thank you, Zach.
And you can also download it at iTunes by just looking up Lying Wonders, Strangest Things. And before we get started, I was checking out spiritdaily.com. You have a retreat coming up in Wichita on September 14th, and also a special trip, a pilgrimage in October. You want to talk about those things?
Well, Wichita, yeah, that'll be on the 14th. It's an all-day retreat. Myself, just discussions all day. It'll be at the Hyatt Regency Hotel downtown. Starts at 10 a.m. And also, yeah, we'll be taking a trip to the apparition site of Medjugorje in Herzegovina. There used to be Yugoslavia at one time, and that's going to be in October. If anyone's interested, they can check us out at spiritdaily.com. And there'll be a link there in the left column. Just look at spiritdaily.com.
What was the apparition at I don't even know how to say the word properly. You could say it.
Medjugorje?
Medjugorje, that's it.
They started in June 24th of 1981, and 6 children, 3 more than Fatima. There has been a Vatican commission that was impaneled, studied it for 3 or 4 years, psychologists, cardinals, bishops, priests, theologians, and so forth, and concluded that the kids did see the Virgin Mary at least that first week. And 3 of the 6 still claim to see her. And there's certainly a feeling there that's astonishing. Millions and millions, dozens of millions of people, I'm not throwing out figures, dozens of millions have now visited there. And I'll tell you, you're hard-pressed to find anyone who's been there who hasn't had a life-changing experience as a result. I ran into the famous football coach there. There have been people like former Treasury Secretary William Simon have been there, Loretta Young, the list goes on. The fellow, Jim Caviezel, I think you pronounce his name, who was in the Passion of the Christ. He is a big proponent of Medjugorje, and so forth. It's really a life-changing event. I've been to Fatima, I've been to Lourdes, Guadalupe, and they're fantastic. This is an active site, and so you can feel power that is amazing.
What is the message that Our Lady is trying to give us at Medjugorje?
Yeah, Medjugorje. Well, there's a lot because she gives a monthly message, but overall, it's finding peace through Christ, through God. It's saying the rosary every day. It's going to Mass daily if you can. It's prayer and fasting, and then there are some general comments on the state of the world. She calls this the hour of the power of darkness. She says darkness reigns over the whole world. And as a result, she has told they're no longer kids, she has told the seers that there are going to be major events occurring in the future. There are going to be events that are sent as warnings to the world. There are going to be events occurring in the church. And then there are going to be major global chastisements to break down all of the darkness, all of the evil that has accrued. So it's a very serious message, and it's very similar to Fatima. Pope John Paul II called Medjugorje the fulfillment of Fatima. And the Vatican has stationed a permanent envoy, a Vatican envoy, an archbishop from Poland, there in Medjugorje. It has its own archbishop now, and he went there not knowing what to think and now calls it the spiritual lungs of all of Europe. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they had a youth day recently, a couple of weeks ago, 50,000 young people. And for a church that has trouble attracting young people, I think it behooves our priests and others and bishops to promote it.
Well, it makes sense to me. And these chastisements, how do we recognize them?
Well, one of the seers and this is all for discernment. These are not church-approved messages yet. They're being studied. It was the first week of apparitions that were approved. They're leaving open everything since then. But she says that she will alert a priest 10 days beforehand, and he will announce that the first event, at least in her secrets, is about to take place. All of them seem to mention events coming as warnings, but they don't know each other's secrets. Each one is to get 10 secrets. 3 of them have all 10. The 3 that still see the Virgin Mary have only received 9 of them. When they receive their 10th, she stops appearing daily to them. So they don't even know if they share the same ones, but they're talking about it sounds like regional events that would occur as warnings to the world, and everyone will hear about them, but they won't affect everyone in the world. But when we get to the chastisements down the road from the warnings, that's another issue altogether. Those will affect everybody in the world, and they seem like they're talking about something transformational and a transition in our era, the end of our age.
I was listening to Father Malachi Martin on Art Bell from 1996, which would have been his first interview on Coast to Coast. And he talked about the chastisements and how they were approaching. And he also mentioned this 3 days of darkness. That was, I guess, part of the Fatima secrets, supposedly the third secret. Do you know anything about the 3 days of darkness?
Sure. I've written about it, and actually it doesn't come from Fatima. It comes from, it started in the 1700s in cloistered convents in Europe, especially France, where mystic nuns were receiving that. And through the centuries, especially in the 1800s, it picked up steam, and there were certain mystics, usually nuns, who added to the prophecy of these 3 days of darkness. It's not something that has occurred at a church-approved apparition, nor is it a prophecy attached to any canonized saint at this point. But certainly a lot of people believe that it will occur, and they point to Exodus. They point to some of the judgments on Egypt in the Old Testament for how Egypt was chastised with 3 days of darkness. And the belief is that something will cause this basically impenetrable, sudden darkness throughout the world, across all countries, and that it'll be a very trying circumstance for obviously everyone involved. There'll be no electricity, and our infrastructure will not be functioning. So that's kind of the gist of it. I don't know what to think about it, but it's something I prefer not encountering.
I wouldn't want to encounter that as well, but the one warning or the one advice I got, if it should happen, don't even bother going outside and don't even look outside the window. Much like Lot's wife, you'll be turned into a pillar of salt. If you go to spiritdaily.com, there's various stories that you'll find and some very helpful things, including Saints of the Day, Mass readings, daily homily, and Mary's message, plus all the other stories, which are always fun to check out. It's Michael H. Brown with Zach Martin, Lying Wonders, Strangest Things. We talked about the cosmos and this days of darkness. And right now, I think there's a lot of signs of the times that are taking place right before our eyes, although most people probably are not in tune to recognize them. So why don't we take a little time and go over some of the things that we'll find in Lying Wonders, Strangest Things, a sign of the times, and the things that we're seeing in space, whether there be rock stars who see UFOs or things from the earth beneath our feet or out in the sky around us.
Well, the biggest book I ever wrote was called The Final Hour, and it was about the prophecies from the Virgin Mary since 1830, since the miraculous medal in France. And it's fascinating, the prophecies from La Salette to current visionaries. And I do mention 3 days of darkness in there, which originally started up in the late 1700s, like I said. And there was a Marie Julie Yaheni who in the early 1900s really promoted that. But at any rate, you look at what's going on right now in the world, and there seems to be an intensification. Whether it's weather, we just watched another hurricane pass by Florida. We were hunkered down for that. I mean, the first year I was in Florida, we were brushed by 3 hurricanes. You had Hurricane Katrina slam into voodoo-bound New Orleans, and it's very interesting, Zach, because if you look up the name Katrina, it means purification. And so many other events. I don't care if it's 9/11 or whether it's something to do with terrorism or something meteorological or something seismic. A lot of rumblings along that ring of fire in the Pacific, from Japan, curving all the way down through Canada and California, and South America. So volcanic type rumblings also. Lots of what I think are signs of the times, because storms, whether they're hurricanes or just plain thunderstorms and tornadoes, have been intensifying now for several decades. And while people, especially the secular media, tries to pin it all on climate change, which has become a political football, unfortunately, I look upon what's going on, and there is a shift, certainly a shift in weather and a shift in climate, but I look upon it as a sign from God, as something that is part of the preparation for the first of these warnings and then chastisements that are going to be sent because of the state of the world, because of the darkness.
Another thing that Father Malachi Martin mentioned, I always found him very fascinating to listen to, along with Art Bell. It seems like those two were very much on the same wavelength when they would get on the radio. He mentioned that it was around 1996, and with 3 years' time, pay attention to the skies, and then some big shift would happen. And I think that big shift that we can look back in time, hindsight is always 20/20. I was thinking about this, is how much things have changed, and the pace has picked up, this quickening, so to speak, as a result of 9/11. And I think that's one of those, the fruit is starting to ripen, where you see this, and we immediately think it's going to be a quick succession, like one thing after another. But I think the events, especially biblical events, happen over time. And when we read the stories, it seems to be condensed, but it really took a lot more time for some things to take place. So it's almost 20 years ago since we had the event of 9/11. Then we've had these wars and rumors of wars. We've been in a state of war consistently and constantly since 2001, when you think about it. I don't think our children that we've raised that are approaching their 20s even remember a world at peace. At least when you and I were growing up, we had maybe a decade where we took a break from all of that stuff. Yes, we're in the Cold War, I understand, but we had some pleasant times, especially after Vietnam. So we had maybe a 10 to 12-year period of time where we really didn't have too much going on as far as being at war. But this war is never stopping. Then we have the intensity of these storms that you spoke of, earthquakes throughout the world. And then the geyser that's, I guess, going on nonstop, from what I understand in the news. I've kind of just passed over it, but at Yellowstone. And then the supervolcano and the rumblings. And this is something else that Father Malachi talked about, how radiation is going to be used against us by the evil one. And we have the discussion about 5G. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the air right now. A lot of things that you can't just simply ignore and say, oh, it's just another average everyday happening. I would say we're right in the middle of the chastisement that's going on right now.
That's right, and I couldn't agree more. I've after Final Hour, wrote several other books of prophecy. One was called Tower of Light on what I think is going to be a manifestation in some way of Christ in light, based on this other prophecy. This is a prophecy that I think foretold 9/11. I think 9/11 was a seminal event. I think a prophetic event. It had prophetic meaning to it, and it affected everyone in a way that goes beyond just your normal major catastrophe. But this prophecy had said that that there would be clouds over certain areas like New York City, that the pride there would be broken. You know, the World Trade Center was considered the pride of New York. You heard that on 9/11. And it also said that our technological infrastructure was going to break down because it wasn't in accordance with God's plan and with His simplicity. It also predicted the rise of kind of a personage of evil, an antichrist. So I've written quite a bit about prophecy, several books, and I myself have no doubt that I think you expressed it very well. Too many people have premature expectation. They think things should happen like in rapid sequence, but you know, God has His own timing. Some things may have years between them or decades, and other things may happen from day to day. I heard that right from the mouth of a visionary in Medjugorje. So we're certainly in interesting times. I'm not frightened by it. I think purification is good. I think anything that God allows and does is good. So, well, you know, keep your ear to the rail and your eyes to the sky, because it's an interesting time. When you go, I was doing one research project on this subject and went to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, and to talk with the foremost experts on asteroids and comets and find out how little we know about them and what can happen and how suddenly is a very sobering experience. So it can happen from anywhere, above or below.
And they're not going to tell us if one is actually going to strike the earth, because it would create worldwide panic. Now, I would say Jesus speaks to us in the Gospels about always being prepared. Like, you never know when your time is up, so to speak. And he also gives us a glimpse in Matthew 24. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down." Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom, which is preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." So, and then he goes into the abomination of desolation, which was spoken by the prophet Daniel, which kind of gives us a key about more information that we should look up on our own. It's very interesting how that takes place in this chapter of Matthew 24.
Yes, and, you know, it's very interesting how soon after that, you know, the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, taken over, basically. And don't forget, in 79 AD 79, you had Pompeii, the eruption there, you know, near Naples, and that was an incredible disaster. Talk about darkness. There were 3 days of darkness there, and just a tremendous event occurring. So Jesus does predict things, and he does talk about these types of events, and I think we need to heed current day prophets. Not all of them. You have to be discerning, like you said. You just quoted. Be careful of those who claim to be him. But boy, the mystics seem to have a confluence and a consistency in many regards, the Christian ones, and pointing to a tremendous series of events that will come, like I said, as purification, as a cleansing, which I think we should all welcome and prepare for.
I agree with you. Absolutely. And how do we prepare for that? Well, you have to make a decision at one point where you're going to put your energies into and who you're going to trust. You're going to trust in Jesus or by some politician that you see and hear. Are you going to put your hope and trust in treasures of the kingdom of heaven and work on your relationship with God? Or are you just going to pursue secular endeavors and thinking that's going to make you happy? A lot of people, Michael, are unhappy these days, and the suicide rates are off the charts. So why is that? I would say, and you can comment on this as well, social media has a lot to do with this.
Well, I agree totally. I mean, social media is really based on narcissism. I mean, talk about prophets. Andy Warhol was a prophet. He said everyone would be famous for 15 minutes, and Facebook has made that true, as well as Twitter and so forth. But everybody, they go on Facebook, and their friends will post things, and they only post things that have happy pictures of themselves and make themselves look like they're having a better life than other people, and this depresses folks. Or they get in, of course, to diatribes on social media. It rancorous. I think it's added a lot to the suicide rate, and just being untethered spiritually has caused so much suicide. When people don't have a sense of purpose, and they only get that sense of purpose through spirituality, aiming for heaven, aiming for the afterlife. But if you don't have a sense of that afterlife, and you don't believe in it, you don't believe in God, well, it's nihilistic. What is there to live for? And that's why we're seeing such a skyrocketing rate of suicide. One of the reasons, anyway.
Now, I would also add to that there is a sense, or I'm going to say it like this, the Kinks stated it best, a state of confusion. The devil likes to confuse us and confound us, and most of us are, every once in a while, we fall into that state of confusion. No, this can't be right, or you start doubting your faith, or you stop. It starts like in little steps, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you've lost your faith completely. And it's once you lose your faith, it's very hard to gain it back. It's not impossible, but it really makes it more difficult. So with that in mind, one of the things that we all can do, regardless of your denomination, is make sure that you pick up your Bible and read it every day and leave it open. And here's the other thing. When, people claim to be these great teachers of faith, and I'm not going to mention any by name, but when they start tickling your ears that if you do this, then God's going to reward you with money, and if you give $100, you're going to get $1,000 back, and life is all good, and I'm going to drive around in my Porsche after this. I feel so much blessing as a result of my faith in God. It doesn't work anything like that. That's not what our faith is about. We hope to be rewarded in heaven. So what we have in this world really does not matter, and we have to start detaching ourselves. A lot of people get upset that they can't buy a house, or they get this idea. Here's the American dream, Michael. I'm going to get it. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get a great job. And the starting salary for most of these kids coming out of college, Michael, what do you think that they want? $60,000, $75,000 a year. Okay. And then I'm going to get married, settle down, find a house, a nice house, a big, gigantic house, and have 2 cars. And, hey, it's going to be great. Take family vacation twice a year. And is the other interesting thing that people, when they sit down and they look at that 20-year, 30-year mortgage, they look at their income, what they're making from the job, and they go, oh, yeah, well, we'll be able to swing this payment for the rest of our lives. Not counting on the fact that, hey, like everybody else, you could get laid off and lose your job.
That's right.
And then what? What happens when you don't have all of these material things? Who are you?
That's right.
Yeah.
This rampant materialism is foundational behind the suicide rate, and I like to comment on what you said about the first sign of the devil, because it's totally right on. Confusion and chaos. One of the very first signs, frequently the first sign of his presence, is when we feel confused, whether personally or as a society. And we're very confused right now in America and around the world. Everybody is in a state of confusion, and we're also in a state of hyper materialism. I've never seen ever so much focus on money. It's absolutely amazing. Everyone wants that McMansion, and it doesn't take much for a lot of those nice, high-paying jobs to vanish.
Yeah, and then try to keep up with that. I saw a young man who obviously played for a professional football team in the New York area, because I don't live too far from MetLife Stadium where the Giants and Jets play. A lot of my friends have played in the NFL. I could have played in the NFL. I'm 6'4", 255 pounds, built like a linebacker. So I'm a pretty big priest up there. Nobody's going to mess with me, right? Anyway, they go out. A lot of these kids, I call them kids because they really are overgrown children. And the first thing they do is buy a Ferrari. And I'm thinking, well, that's nuts. I mean, why don't you go get yourself a nice Dodge? You want to live a little, then go get the Dodge Challengers, Scatback, Hellcat, have some fun with that. But really, you want to spend $500,000 on a Ferrari? Then I had another friend of mine. Check this out. I'm getting a new Ferrari, custom made, $1 million. I'm like, you know what? You're spending $1 million on a Ferrari? I don't know, man. And then the next thing you know, they're no longer playing in the NFL. They're no longer a celebrity. They no longer can make that money, so that they have to sell all of those things, go bankrupt. And it seems like almost as if they spend the rest of their life trying to land on the moon. And they've already landed on the moon. They can never go back there again. Like, that's where I felt sorry for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Once you've gone up there and you landed, what's next? You've achieved at the age of 30-something or young 40s the pinnacle of success. What's after that? So this is where the unhappiness starts, because you don't know who you are. You don't know who you are spiritually. So while we talk about Lying Wonders, Strangest Things, Michael H. Brown, I'm Zach Martin, we're also encouraging you, while these stories are amazing and fantastic, and we're giving you a glimpse of what is coming down the road, we both encourage you to get closer to God. If you're a Roman Catholic, be a pious Roman Catholic. If you're an Orthodox Christian, be a pious Orthodox Christian. If you're a Lutheran, be a pious Lutheran. And believe me, you know better. Don't fall for these teachings that tickle your ears, and all of a sudden sin is okay, and what was good is now bad, and what was bad is now good. Don't fall for any of that stuff. That is a deception. That is a lie, and that is the road to hell.
That's right. That's the confusion.
Absolutely.
The ultimate confusion.
So, Mike, we're running out of time right now, so why don't you tell us what you got coming down the road as far as your pilgrimages and your various talks?
You mentioned a pilgrimage. You mentioned Art Bell. I've done his show back in the 90s, and I'm going to be on Sunday night, Coast to Coast. At least that's the schedule right now. And talking about the book, Lying Wonders, Strangest Things, God willing. And we have that Wichita event next week, and so it's kind of shaping up as it's always a busy time here, but with the daily, spiritdaily.com, but I welcome it. I welcome it in so many ways. I
have to join you on one of these pilgrimages, and there's a number that is on spiritdaily.com. I'm going to give it to people right now who might be listening. You can go to spiritdaily.com, go down towards the left side of the website, and you'll see a number, 877-333-9290. That sounds like a wonderful time. Man, there is nothing better, Michael, than going to visit some of those great cathedrals and churches in Europe, in Italy, in Germany, in Russia. I've always wanted to go to St. Petersburg and see some of the old Orthodox cathedrals. That's what I'm really into. Yeah, these pilgrimages, oh my gosh, they're so much fun. And then got to go to the Holy Land. Got to go to the Jordan. You got to go see where it all happened. And it's not, I will just say this, seeing is not believing. Your faith should not be affected by any of these things, but it certainly helps. Certainly will strengthen it, yeah.
It's really helped our kids, I know that.